Move it, Pops. You're blocking the walkway.
Almost done here, sir. Give me a minute.
I didn't ask for a minute. I asked you to move.
Yes, sir.
You know they let anybody push a broom around here now.
Somebody's got to.
Careful with that tone, old man. I could get you fired with one phone call.
Then I guess you should make it.
Smile for the camera, Pops. This is going up tonight.
Whatever you need, sir.
Everett Klene had been sweeping the same stretch of sidewalk outside the Fort Ashworth Family Housing Center for 6 years, and in that time, exactly 4 people had asked his name. He was 66 years old, built like a fence post left out in the weather, 6 thin, weathered, upright in a way that made younger men stand up straighter without knowing why. He wore his gray coveralls buttoned to the collar, even in July heat. He moved like a man who had nowhere he needed to be in a hurry, which was the opposite of true. Every morning he arrived at the housing center before the sun cleared the water tower, unlocked the maintenance shed, and began his rounds. He fixed leaking faucets in junior enlisted housing. He patched drywall for families who couldn't afford a work order to sit in a queue for 3 weeks. He watched the base's youngest kids at the bus stop each morning, not because it was his job, but because their fathers were deployed and their mothers were exhausted, and somebody should. Second Lieutenant Colton Voss had never once wondered why the groundskeeper's hands looked like they belonged to a much younger man. Colton was 23, freshly commissioned, 6 weeks into his first assignment, and already the most followed officer on the installation's unofficial social feeds. He ran a page called Voss Standard 6 clips of his workouts, his uniform inspections, his opinions on leadership, all cut with the kind of music that made a gym look like a movie. He had 80,000 followers who had never worn a uniform and loved him anyway. His father, retired Colonel Bradford Voss, now ran a logistics contracting firm that held 2 of the base's largest supply agreements. Bradford had built his son's confidence the way he built his contracts, with volume, not proof. Everett had learned the shape of young men like Colton a long time ago. He didn't hate him. He watched him the way you watch weather rolling in. Not with fear, just attention. The clip from that morning went up at 6 that evening. Voss Standard captioned it, "Discipline starts with respect. Some people never learned either." 40,000 views by midnight. In the comments, a handful of people called it exactly what it was. Most people laughed.
Only one person on base watched the video and felt something twist in her stomach that had nothing to do with humor.
Quick pause before we continue. If you're watching this from somewhere in the world right now, let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if you're enjoying stories like this, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because tomorrow's episode, it goes even deeper than this. Priya ran the front desk of the Family Support Center, 3 buildings down from the maintenance shed. She'd worked with Everett for 4 years and had never once heard him raise his voice. She'd seen him carry an air conditioner up 2 flights of stairs for a pregnant spouse whose husband was in Poland. She'd seen him sit with a crying 6-year-old whose father had missed a birthday video call, patient as stone, until the boy laughed again. She'd seen him catch a falling ladder one-handed without turning his head, like his body had reacted before his mind agreed to. She never mentioned that last one to anyone. Some things you just filed away. Priya had also seen Colton Voss find new ways to embarrass Everett nearly every week since he arrived. Small things, cruel in the way boredom is cruel. Blocking his cart in doorways, timing him on tasks, and posting the results. Calling him Pops and old-timer in front of housing residents like it was affectionate, knowing it wasn't. She'd mentioned it to her supervisor once. Her supervisor had mentioned Bradford Voss's contract renewal was up for review in October, and the conversation ended there. That evening, walking to her car, Priya passed the maintenance shed and saw Everett sitting on an overturned bucket, phone in his hand, screen dark, thumb resting over a single saved message he never opened. She didn't ask. She'd learned not to. But she noticed the way his jaw tightened, the way his shoulders carried something heavier than a mop and bucket ever could. She didn't know his son's name yet. She would, soon enough. The whole base would, but not before things got much worse first. Everett Klene's personnel file at the housing center listed his prior job history as custodial services, private sector. It was not a lie. It was simply not the whole shape of the truth. What the file didn't say, that Everett had spent 19 years as an Army Special Forces medic, the kind soldiers requested by name when things went sideways in places that never made the news. What it didn't say, that he had stabilized more gunshot wounds in culverts and rooftops than most trauma surgeons see in a career. What it didn't say, that his own son, Corporal Daniel Klene, had followed him into medic training, had been good at it, better than his father, some said, and had died 11 years ago when a supply convoy he'd volunteered to ride along with hit a roadside device outside Kandahar. Everett had put in his separation papers 4 months after the funeral. He told the army he was tired. He told himself the same thing so often it had almost become true. What remained of Daniel lived in a single unopened letter, mailed the week before he died, delayed by the military postal system, and delivered 9 days after the notification officers had already come to Everett's door. Everett had never opened it. Some letters, once opened, can't be put back. He took the groundskeeper job at Fort Ashworth because it let him stay near soldiers without being one of them anymore. He watched over young families the way he used to watch over patrol routes, quietly, thoroughly, without needing thanks. He had told no one on base who he used to be, not because it was a secret he guarded, because nobody had ever asked. By the second week of August, Colton's videos had stopped being enough on their own. His engagement was flattening. His father had mentioned it twice at dinner, the way some fathers mention grades. So when Colton overheard two privates joking that the old janitor moves weird for a guy his age, bet he used to box or something, an idea started forming that had nothing to do with curiosity and everything to do with content. He waited until the annual end-of-summer field day, an event that packed the parade field with 300 base families, a dunk tank, an obstacle course for the junior enlisted, and, this year, thanks to Colton's suggestion to the event committee, a heat endurance challenge that pushed volunteers through a timed obstacle run in full gear under the August sun. Colton had two purposes that day. The first was visible: win the challenge, post the highlight reel, cement his page's growth before his father's board meeting. The second was quieter, meaner, and known only to him: humiliate the janitor one more time, publicly enough that it might finally push the old man to quit, or crack. He found Everett near the water station an hour before the event, and smiled the smile that made privates nervous. "You should run it, Pops," Colton said, loud enough for the small crowd nearby to hear. "Unless you're worried you'll embarrass yourself in front of everybody. I've got faucets to fix," Everett said.
"Faucets can wait! Prove you're not just here to push a broom!"
Colton turned to the gathering families, phone already lifted. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a volunteer." Everett looked at the crowd of children in the front rows, at a young private named Marisol Ortiz, already strapping into gear 20 feet away, sweat beading on her forehead despite the morning shade, and said nothing else. He picked up his bucket and walked toward the shed. Colton laughed for the camera and called it a win. He didn't know yet that the day's real event hadn't started. The obstacle course ran through the worst of the noon sun, timed heats every 15 minutes, families cheering from folding chairs along a rope line. Colton ran his heat first, posted a personal best, and stayed near the finish to watch the next group's Q1, including Private Marisol Ortiz, 21 years old, 6 weeks out of basic training, determined to prove herself in front of a chain of command that still called her the new one. She was strong through the rope climb. She was strong through the crawl. By the low-wall sprint, her strides had gone ragged, her face gone the wrong color. Tangem, not red, but pale under the flush, a warning sign most people mistake for simple exhaustion. She collapsed 40 feet from the finish line. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. A few phones came up instead of hands. Someone laughed nervously, assuming theater. Colton stood closest, phone already recording out of habit, waiting for her to get up and make it a better clip. She didn't get up. Everett was fixing a hinge on the shed door 200 feet away when he heard the crowd's noise change pitch. 200. The specific sound a crowd makes when it stops performing concern and starts feeling it. He was moving before he'd finished deciding to move. He crossed the field faster than a 66-year-old man should be able to, dropped to his knees beside Marisol, and began working before anyone else had processed what heat stroke actually required. He checked her airway. He shouted for shade, water, and someone to call for a medic team, in that order, in a voice that cut through panic like a blade through cloth.
He got her legs elevated.
He kept talking to her in a low, steady rhythm even after she stopped answering. The exact cadence of a man who had done this before, more times than anyone standing there could imagine.
By the time the on-post medics arrived 4 minutes later, Marisol's temperature was already coming down, her breathing already leveling. The lead medic knelt, checked Everett's work, and looked up at him with an expression nobody at that field day had ever seen, aimed at the groundskeeper. "Who trained you?" the medic asked. Everett didn't answer. He was watching Marisol's eyes focus again, watching color return to her face, and for a moment, his own eyes were somewhere else entirely. A rooftop, a culvert, a convoy that hadn't made it. Before he blinked it away and simply said, "Get her to shade and keep the water coming." Colton Voss stood at the edge of the crowd with his phone still recording, footage of an old man saving a soldier's life instead of the highlight reel he'd planned. For the first time since Everett had started at Fort Ashworth, Colton Voss did not know what to post. The video went up anyway, not the version anyone expected. Colton's editor, Colton himself, alone in his room that night, jaw tight, trimmed the footage until it showed something almost, but not quite, true. It opened on Everett's hands moving fast and sure over Marisol's body. It cut before the part where he called for help. It ended on a caption that read, "Unauthorized medical intervention by base civilian staff. Is this really who's caring for our soldiers?" It was not a lie. It was the same trick Everett had seen used against better men than himself. In different uniforms, for different reasons. True footage, false frame. By morning, the post had crossed 200,000 views. A local news affiliate picked it up under the headline, "Groundskeeper's Battlefield Moves Raise Questions at Fort Ashworth." The comments split into two furious camps. Those who'd seen the full video Priya had quietly saved from the family center's outdoor camera, and those who'd only seen Colton's cut.
Bradford Voss called the installation commander's office before breakfast. He did not ask if the soldier was recovering. He asked whether unlicensed personnel performing unauthorized field medicine opened the base to liability. By the time he hung up, the phrase internal review had already been used twice. Everett found out about the video from a private who showed him her phone with an apologetic wince. He watched it once, said nothing, and went back to fixing the same hinge he'd left half-finished the day before. That night, alone in the small rented house he'd kept since Daniel died, he took out his phone, the old one, the one he still paid to keep active, though its only purpose was a single saved voicemail he could no longer bring himself to play, and set it face down on the counter. He picked up the folder holding Daniel's unopened letter instead, turned it over twice in his hands, and put it back in the drawer without breaking the seal.
Some days, the weight found new ways to sit on him. This was one of them. 2 days later, Everett was called into the housing office and handed a letter of his own, an administrative notice placing him on unpaid leave, pending review of an incident involving unauthorized medical action, effective immediately. The housing director, a soft-spoken man named Douglas Petrie, couldn't meet his eyes while he said it. "It's not personal, Everett. Colonel Voss's office raised concerns. Legal wants to look at the tape." "The whole tape?" Everett asked. "Or the one that's already online?" Petrie didn't answer that. He slid a separation packet across the desk instead. "There's a severance option. Quiet exit. No further review. Or you can wait for the board and see how it goes."
Everett looked at the packet the way a man looks at a bill he already knows he can't pay honestly. I've got 6 years here, Douglas. I'm not walking out because somebody's cutting film wrong.
Petrie lowered his voice. They're saying you could have made it worse. Practicing medicine without current certification. It doesn't matter what actually happened out there, Everett. It matters what the file says happened. Then somebody ought to read the whole file, Everett said, and walked out without signing anything. Priya Chandra was waiting in the parking lot, arms crossed against a wind that wasn't really cold. I saved the outdoor camera footage, she said quietly, full angle, before anyone told me not to. It's on a drive at my apartment. Everett studied her for a long moment. Why? Because you sat with my nephew for 2 hours the week his dad missed his call home, she said. People don't forget kindness that specific. They just don't always say so out loud. Everett nodded once. The closest thing to gratitude his tired face could manage that day. Keep it safe, he said. Don't do anything with it yet.
He didn't yet know how badly he'd need it.
That night, unemployed for the first time in 6 years and watching his name get dragged through a story he hadn't written, Everett sat at his kitchen table with Daniel's letter in front of him again. He thought about the boy who used to shadow him at 8 years old, asking why he wrapped bandages a certain way. He thought about the young man who'd enlisted against his own advice, who'd wanted so badly to matter the same way his father mattered to the men who served beside him. He thought about the last conversation they'd had, 3 days before the convoy, an argument about risk, about volunteering for a route that wasn't Daniel's to ride. You worry too much, Dad. I learned from the best. He had not opened the letter because he was afraid the last words his son ever wrote to him would be kind. Kindness, from a dead son, was somehow harder to carry than anger would have been. He set it down, unopened again, and instead dialed a number he hadn't used in 6 years. It rang twice. Doc Klein? The voice on the other end went instantly alert. All business dropped away. Sir, is that really you? It's me, Reyes, Everett said. I need a favor, and I think I need a witness. Command Sergeant Major Isaiah Reyes had served 2 tours under Everett's care, had watched him hold a line for a wounded convoy for 11 minutes under fire until air support arrived, had put Everett's name into 3 separate valor recommendations that Everett had quietly asked to have withdrawn. Reyes did not need convincing. Say the word, sir, Reyes said. I'll be there by Thursday. Reyes arrived at Fort Ashworth on Thursday morning in his dress uniform, 3 rows of ribbons that made privates straighten instinctively when he walked past. He requested, and was granted, a meeting with the installation commander before noon. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Colonel, Reyes said, sliding a folder across the desk, you have a review board convening on a man your office is calling an unlicensed civilian who endangered a soldier. I'd like you to read his actual service record before that board meets. The commander opened the folder. 19 years of Special Forces medical service.
2 silver stars. Declined public ceremony both times. A combat medical badge. Dozens of soldiers alive today because of triage decisions made under fire. Decisions the current review board was now questioning because they'd been made, once, in a parking lot instead of a combat zone.
He saved my life on a rooftop in 2011, Reyes said quietly. He saved more soldiers than anyone currently serving on this post has ever met. And right now you've got him sitting at home while a 23-year-old lieutenant's father tries to turn a rescue into a scandal. The commander closed the folder slowly. Why didn't any of this appear in his civilian personnel file? Because he didn't ask for it to, Reyes said. That's usually how you find the ones worth trusting. The Administrative Review Board met the following Monday in a conference room too small for the amount of attention now aimed at it. Word had spread. A dozen off-duty soldiers had crowded into the hallway outside, unofficial but present. Priya sat near the back with a small silver drive in her bag, saying nothing yet, waiting for the moment it would matter. Bradford Voss sat beside the base's contracted counsel, poised, certain, a man used to rooms bending around him. Colton sat 1 seat back, arm crossed over his chest, saying nothing, sling absent. He had never actually been injured. The sling had never existed in this story. Only his conscience had. The board civilian council opened with Colton's edited clip, playing it in full, ending on the caption about unauthorized medical intervention. "The concern," she said, "is that an untrained groundskeeper performed medical actions beyond his role, potentially endangering Private Ortiz." Command Sergeant Major Reyes stood before he was called. The board chair allowed it, curiosity outweighing procedure.
Untrained, Reyes repeated. Ma'am, the man you're describing is retired Sergeant First Class Everett Klene, 18 Delta, Special Forces Medical Sergeant, 19 years of service. He has stabilized casualties in conditions this room cannot imagine. What you're calling an incident, soldiers who served with him call Tuesday.
Murmurs moved through the room. The commander, already briefed, said nothing, letting the record speak. "There's more," Reyes continued. "The footage the board has seen is incomplete. I understand there's a full recording available." All eyes turned toward the back of the room, where Priya Chandra rose, drive in hand, and walked it forward without waiting to be asked twice. The unedited footage played in full. It showed everything Colton's cut had removed. Everett's immediate call for medics, his correct triage sequence, his steady voice keeping Marisol conscious, the visible relief on the arriving medical team's faces when they saw the work already done correctly. It showed, at the very end, something Colton's version had cut a full 4 seconds before it happened. Everett Klene's hands shaking, just slightly, once Marisol was stable, the only visible sign, in 6 years on this base, that the old groundskeeper had ever been anything other than calm. The room sat in silence when the video ended. The board chair looked at Bradford Voss. "Colonel, your son produced and distributed the edited version that triggered this review. Was he aware of the portions removed?" Colton stood before his father could answer for him, the way he had never once done in his adult life. "I cut it myself," he said. His voice didn't have the practiced confidence of Voss standard in it anymore. "I knew what I was leaving out. Private Ortiz was already stable when I filmed the ending. I wanted a story, not the truth." He turned toward Everett, who sat with his hands folded, unreadable. "He saved her life, and I tried to end his career for a headline. I don't have an excuse. I just have that." Bradford Voss's expression didn't shift, but something in the room's temperature toward him did. The board chair closed the folder in front of her. "This board finds no basis for administrative action against Mr. Klene. His leave is rescinded effective immediately, with back pay." She looked at Colton. "This board has no jurisdiction over your commission, Lieutenant Voss. That matter will be referred elsewhere." The referral moved fast once it started. Colton's chain of command opened a separate inquiry into conduct unbecoming and the deliberate distribution of misleading footage involving a fellow soldier's medical emergency, a far more serious matter to the Army than it had ever been to his followers. Within 3 weeks, he was reassigned off Fort Ashworth pending the outcome, his social media accounts quietly deactivated on legal counsel's advice, his father's logistics contract flagged for a routine and unusually thorough audit. Nobody offered Colton a mop and a mentor. Nobody wrote him a redemption arc. He packed a car in the housing lot on a gray Tuesday, and the base that had once cheered his highlight reels barely noticed him leave. Some doors close and nobody stands nearby to hold them for the person walking through. Bradford Voss's contract renewal was quietly declined in October. He did not call the installation commander again. Marisol Ortiz recovered within 36 hours and returned to duty the following week. She found Everett in the maintenance shed on her first day back, still in her PT gear, and said the only thing she'd been able to think of since she woke up in the medical tent. "They told me what you did," she said. "Nobody's ever done that for me before, not like that. You'd have done the same," Everett said. "Once somebody showed you how." "Would you show me?" she asked. Everett looked at her for a long moment, a young soldier, alive, asking the exact question his own son had once asked him. "Come by Thursdays," he said. "I teach a little, nothing official." That evening, Everett came home to a quiet house for what felt like the first time in weeks. He sat at the kitchen table, took Daniel's letter from the drawer, and did not put it back. He opened it slowly, The way a man opens something he has spent 11 years protecting himself from. Dad, riding along with the supply run tomorrow, just to help out. Don't give me that look you're not even here to give. I learned patience from you, remember? And how to keep my hands steady when everybody around me loses theirs. You always said the job isn't the fighting, it's the staying calm long enough to help. I think about that every day out here. See you when I'm back. Save me something from Mom's kitchen if there's any left. Love you, Dad.
Everett read it twice. He did not cry the way people expect a man to cry in stories like this. No shaking shoulders, no collapse. He simply sat very still for a long time, letter in his weathered hands, and let 11 years finally exhale out of his chest in a single slow breath.
Then he folded it carefully, set it beside the small photo of Daniel he kept on the counter, and, for the first time since the funeral, left it facing outward instead of turned down. Fort Ashworth's Family Support Center held a small ceremony that November. Not for Everett, who declined every version of a spotlight offered to him, but for the safety protocol now written into every future field event on post, mandatory certified medical coverage at endurance activities, a policy that would carry, unofficially, the name soldiers had already started using among themselves, the Klene Protocol. Everett didn't attend the ceremony. He was teaching a Thursday session in the shed's back lot, showing Marisol Ortiz and 2 other young soldiers how to check a pulse under stress, how to keep their voice steady when someone else's body was failing. The job isn't the fighting, he told them, the way his son had once written it back to him, without either of them realizing they were quoting each other. It's staying calm long enough to help. Priya watched from the doorway, arms crossed, smiling in the specific quiet way of someone who had helped carry a true story back into the light and expected no credit for it. Nobody at Fort Ashworth called him Pops anymore. Most of them, for the first time in 6 years, simply called him by his name. People still ask Everett Klene about the video sometimes, the clip of an old groundskeeper working a dying woman back to life in the middle of a field day, filmed by someone who tried to use it against him. He tells them the same thing every time.
The rescue was never the interesting part. Any trained hand could have done it.
What's interesting is how long he stood invisible in plain sight. How many mornings he fixed a faucet or watched a child at a bus stop without anyone wondering what else those hands might know. So here's the question this one leaves behind. If you'd been standing at that rope line, phone already out, would you have filmed him or asked his name first? Real talk. I wrote this one thinking about every veteran who quietly goes back to an ordinary job after service and never mentions what they carried to get there. Somewhere near you is someone like Everett. Ask their name before the story has to ask it for you. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who feels overlooked where they work. Up next, you've got 2 more incredible stories waiting on your screen. If this one hit you, tap to watch the next, and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. Oh, and drop your city in the comments. I want to see where you're watching from.